On behalf of We Need a Village Again, We're Better Together, WNAVA, we sincerely hope that the Black History presentations have served as enlightening, inspiring, and thought-provoking experiences for everyone. We must pay it forward by joining the movement for justice, equity, and democracy, particularly supporting Black communities who have long endured America's social injustices. We encourage you to revisit our social media platforms to delve deeper into the greatness of our ancestors and the contemporary leaders and ongoing contributions we continue to make. Thank you for participating in this journey. Please share, like, and subscribe to stay connected. Enjoy the video collage showcasing the brilliance and resilience of legendary history makers whose contributions we continually benefit from.
Benjamin O. Davis Sr. was the first African American to earn the rank of Brigadier General in the United States Army. Born in 1877 in Washington, D.C., Davis joined the U.S. Army in 1898 during the Spanish-American War. He was discharged after the war but soon re-enlisted as a private in the 9th Cavalry Regiment. When Charles Young, an African American officer who also appears on this list, assumed command of the regiment, he encouraged Davis to pursue his goal of becoming an officer. In 1901, Davis passed the officer's exam and assumed the rank of second lieutenant. Between 1905 and 1938, he taught military science at Wilberforce University and Tuskegee University, both historically Black institutions. During World War I, Davis served in the Philippines. After the war, Davis escorted mothers and widows of World War I soldiers to Europe to visit the grave sites of the husbands and sons they lost. In 1940, Davis attained the rank of Brigadier General, becoming the first African-American general officer in the U.S. Army. During World War II, the Army sent Davis to the European theater to inspect the state of African-American troops. He retired in 1948, having spent 50 years in the military. Throughout his career, he continually advocated for the desegregation of the military, which occurred 6 days after his retirement. Benjamin Davis Sr. is buried here in Section 2.
Bessie Coleman's legacy as a pilot is remembered in her hometown of Atlanta, Texas, with a historical marker and other exhibits inside the Regional Museum. She was born in 1892 and had 12 brothers and sisters. Her father was a sharecropper, and Bessie picked cotton to earn money. In 1915, she moved to Chicago to attend beauty school. She heard stories about women who flew airplanes in Europe. American flight schools didn't admit women, so Bessie learned French and moved to France. In 1921, she became the first Black woman to obtain her pilot license. She returned to the U.S. and focused her attention on barnstorming, or performing dangerous tricks while flying, and earned the nickname Queen Bess. The Atlanta Museum has a small-scale model of her bi-wing plane. During her tours of the country, she fought against segregation and encouraged other Black Americans to follow her path and become pilots. Bessie died in 1926 in a plane crash at the age of 34, but her impact on the aviation world continues to be an influence today.
Bill Russell was a stellar athlete on the court.
Bill Russell was the heart and soul of that team, but he stood as the heart and soul not only of that team, but of the community beyond that team.
But those who know him best say it was his legacy off the court that left a lasting impression.
He was mindful. He was courageous. He was a champion in ways that most people don't think about championship.
Dan Lebowitz, the executive director of Northeastern Sport and Society, said that includes the courage to confront racism.
Russell was part of a great era. He was part of the era of, where athletes really start to understood their power. They were leaning into the experience that they had lived. They were wondering why their parents were treated certain ways, why there was no legacy wealth in their communities, why they were never considered full citizens.
Russell, a civil rights activist, marched with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in the prime of his career and publicly voiced his support against segregation in Boston public schools.
All the things that he did to make betterment in this country in this world, and that's what it was all about.
Despite his trying experiences here in Boston, NBA historian Coach Willie May said Russell never gave up on working to make things better.
I asked him about the restaurant that he bought called Slade's Bar and Grill, which is still open, and I asked him why. He said, because we had nowhere to go. I wanted a place for us to be able to come and enjoy, after the game.
And I think Lebowitz said it best. Bill Russell was a giant, but not because of his size, but because of his bravery, his strength, and his spirit.
Dr. Patricia E. Bath was born November 4, 1942, in Harlem, New York, and knew from an early age she wanted to help others. She received her medical degree from Howard University College of Medicine in 1968 and went on to become the first African-American resident in ophthalmology in 1973 at the New York University. While training in New York, Dr. Bath observed a lack of access to eye care for minorities and the poor and pioneered the worldwide discipline of community ophthalmology, which brings eye care to underserved populations. In 1976, Dr. Bath co-founded the American Institute for the Prevention of Blindness, and in 1986 she invented the laser phaco probe, a groundbreaking treatment for cataracts. She patented the device in 1988, becoming the first African-American female doctor to receive a medical patent. Dr. Patricia E. Bath, a DCN Black History Hero.
Dr. Shirley Ann Jackson, a visionary, scientist, educator, and public policy innovator, has broken barriers and blazed trails throughout her life. She was the first Black woman to earn a doctorate at MIT. Her breakthrough scientific research has aided innovations for several technologies we use today, such as the touch-tone phone, fiber optic and solar cells, and the fax machine, just to name a few. During her tenure at Bell Labs, Dr. Jackson researched theoretical, quantum, and optical physics. Her two leading studies led to advances in telecommunication tech like Caller ID, a feature that has given people the opportunity to screen unknown or unwanted phone calls, and call waiting, a feature that notifies people of a new incoming call while on another call. Both technologies have enhanced how everyone across the globe communicates. Dr. Jackson is also a strong advocate of diversity, not only in technology and the sciences, but also at the corporate executive level and in boardrooms for high-profile companies.
At 53, Mellody Hobson is known in many circles as a business icon. Among some of her most high-profile roles, co-CEO of an investment firm, chair of the board of Starbucks, a director at J.P. Morgan Chase, previously chair of DreamWorks Animation. The list goes on.
And she is amazing. Yes.
Local professional Charlene Moss is one of several fellows at the Urban Leadership Foundation of Colorado, a program designed to support future leaders. 5 years ago, Moss was a finance student who learned about Hobson early on.
There are not a lot of role models in that space, and so I've been able to learn a lot observing her.
News of the Walton family purchase of the Denver Broncos is elevating Mellody Hobson's name even more, as she will be part of the ownership group.
Her resume is amazing. Like, have you seen her background?
Hobson is breaking barriers, said to be the first African-American to have an ownership stake in an NFL team. Local business owner Talani Granger, and also a fellow at the Urban Leadership Foundation, is excited for Hobson's future contributions to Broncos country and the next generation of leaders.
One other person to show my daughter, like, you literally can do anything, and look, she looks just like you.
Hobson's newest role is even more impressive when you consider her past. She is the youngest of 6 kids raised by a single mom in Chicago's South Side who struggled financially. In 1991, she became the first in her family to graduate from college when she earned a degree from Princeton. The rest is history, and we have yet to see the full impact of her success.
We have Mellody Hobson. We're seeing, oh, that could be me. And it just becomes more and more possible for young Black girls and young people like me who are like, oh, yeah, we can do that.
November 14th, 1960 was the first day of first grade for 6-year-old Ruby Bridges of New Orleans. That was also a memorable date in American history. It was the first day of court-ordered desegregation of the New Orleans public school system. Back in 1954, the Supreme Court declared the racial segregation of public schools unconstitutional. More than a year later, some African American parents in New Orleans sued the school board for failure to comply with the court's ruling. Finally, after almost 5 years of legal wrangling, a federal order was issued, demanding the gradual desegregation of New Orleans schools, beginning with the first grade. So, in November 1960, Ruby was one of only 4 black students starting first grade at the previously all-white schools. Ruby attended William Frantz Elementary. The other 3 went to another school. Federal marshals escorted Ruby past a rioting white mob into the building. All of the teachers except one refused to teach while a black child was enrolled. And within that first week of classes, nearly all of the white students in the schools had withdrawn. In Ruby's class, she and the teacher were the only 2, and it stayed that way for the rest of the school year. Despite the continued threats and retaliation against her family, Ruby remained at Frantz Elementary, and in 1961, she advanced to the 2nd grade.
Sometimes I hear people saying nothing has changed, but for someone to grow up the way I grew up in the cotton fields of Alabama, to now be serving in the United States Congress, makes me want to tell them, come and walk in my shoes.
John Lewis grew up in rural Alabama at the height of segregation and Jim Crow. And at a very early age, he understood the inequality between African Americans and white Americans in Southern society. He was inspired to do something about that. He initially wanted to become a minister. So he came to Nashville, Tennessee as a young adult to study theology. He quickly, however, became sidetracked because he came to Nashville at the very moment when many African American and white students in that city were organizing to desegregate lunch counters and businesses in downtown movement. John Lewis quickly found his way to the members of the Nashville movement, and that redirected his entire career. That's when he signed on to become a movement activist and joined the marches and the protests there. What makes John Lewis so significant in any history of the civil rights movement is that as a result of this decision that he made in Nashville to dedicate his life to social activism, he was present at practically every major event in the civil rights era of the 60s. For example, he became involved in the Freedom Rides in 1961.
A bus was set on fire in Anniston, Alabama. We were beaten and arrested and jailed, but we helped bring an end to segregation in public transportation.
Congressman Lewis, John Lewis, was and is a very courageous man. He was willing to be arrested and to go to jail for things in which he believed, the epitome of nonviolent protest for something he thought was right, true equality and social justice.
Another action that John Lewis was involved in is the famous march in 1965 from Selma, Alabama to the state capitol in Montgomery. Members of SNCC, along with members of the SCLC, led by Dr. King, Andrew Young, decide to march very visibly from Selma, this very small town that no one had ever heard of, to Montgomery, in order to call attention to the need to protect the voting rights of the black people and the poor people of the state of Alabama.
I happen to believe, and I truly believe this, that the vote is precious, almost sacred in a democratic society. It is the most powerful, non-violent instrument or tool that we have, and we have to use it. When people come together and pool their political power, they can determine who is the mayor, who is the police chief, who is the governor, who is the congressperson, and who is the president of the United States.
John Lewis was invited to give a speech at the very important 1963 March on Washington in Washington, D.C. The March on Washington is a proud moment for John Lewis, not only because he gets to stand before the nation talking about what it means to be a member of the movement, but also because he comes on as a prelude to Dr. King's famous I Have a Dream speech.
Those who have said be patient and wait, we must say that we cannot be patient. We do not want our freedom gradually, but we want to be free now.